Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Modern Business Operations. My name is Sagi. I'm the CEO and founder of Tonkean. And today I have the pleasure of hosting Josh, the CIO of Iron Mountain. Josh, thanks for joining me today.
All right. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. Well, like any other episode, I want to start by learning more a little bit about you and how you got to be a CIO, a bit about the background. And if you want to share a little bit about Iron Mountain too.
Sure. Yeah, like you said, I'm currently the CIO at Iron Mountain. I live in Florida with my wife and two teenage daughters. In terms of how I got here, it's a super interesting story. It could take up the whole time of the podcast, but briefly, I began my career as a developer, and I progressed through product engineering roles and enterprise architecture. And then I ran quite a few large enterprise transformation roles at different Fortune 1000 companies. And that's really where I learned a lot about, unlocking growth and optimizing cost, along the way. And that experience is really serving me well, in the current role where we're on this really amazing growth trajectory at Iron Mountain, something that we call Project Matterhorn. But as you'll learn, more as I talk about this, a lot of what we're doing is not only growing the top line, but managing expense and cost along the way. And that's really, the enabling engine behind any true growth story. In terms of how I became CIO, I would say it's really kind of right place, right time, and always being willing to take on the hard job and surrounding myself with really, really smart people, people much smarter than myself.
I love that. It's already a good tip for people. Let's talk about let's talk about a little bit more about that scaling thing, because I think what you mentioned, I want to hear like the specifics about our mountain, but it is very much also, I think, where a lot of companies find themselves in this last couple of years with the financial, atmosphere changing, where, scale by any cost is long gone. And it's, you got to scale with the right cost. So yeah, maybe we'll start with the specificity of Iron Mountain.
Yeah, absolutely. What I can say is, this unique vantage point that I have as the CIO of my organization, which obviously is a G&A expense, on the balance sheet, is that cost leadership is really built into the DNA, because this is such a direct impact on EBITDA, and the bottom line, right? So while we're positioned as an enabler of the tremendous growth, transformation that I mentioned that Iron Mountain is growing through and experiencing at this moment in time, our DNA is really shining through, as we go through that, we're an optimization engine that's really, propelling the overall value, to our customers, to our shareholders, and to our stakeholders. So, while a lot of times, as an IT organization or a CIO led organization is seen as an afterthought, we're really seen as really the propellant, the rocket fuel in a true growth engine. Because, there's a lot of things that you have to ensure while you're managing the expense as the top line grows, and you want to make sure that expense doesn't grow linearly or outpace the actual growth, or that's not a very compelling story.
So let's double click into this, because I think a lot of leaders in general, but more specifically around CIO office in department or COO in operation teams, I think a lot of times this is sort of this is the job in many ways is, but so many times, to kind of like what you alluded to, it's not ended up like that. It becomes more of an afterthought, and not necessarily something that leads the mark. What is it in your current team that you were able to get to that point?
Yeah, it's a good call out. And I think one approach that I take personally, and I've learned from some different mentors that I've had, along the way, as I mentioned, the long winding road to the CIO office, you know, um, is really, how we think about, efficiency and cost optimization really starts with the people. and you have to have a very people-centric organization and people who are passionate about their job and why they do the job. And I think if you start there and you build really a culture of, trust, transparency, accountability, and empowerment, then that can make all the difference between, an organization that just sees themselves as an afterthought and then the business sees as a black box versus really, like I said, an enabler to growth, an enabler to the broader business transformation that's going on. Um, it's something that I like to think about, when we talk about, say automation as an enabler of the growth engine and of optimization, is, if I were to summarize automation, I would think about, our goal is always to reduce manual effort or toil, for the employees, for the customers, but also do this while we're also ensuring, that we're improving quality, we're improving efficiency, and we're ultimately improving the experience for the user of the service. So that's how we try to think about it.
And is this philosophy you feel, so if I understand it correctly, this is not only externally for your customers, internally the way you guys work.
Right. It's intrinsic. It's internal to our DNA. It's how we operate from a monthly culture series that we run within, my enterprise IT organization, to how we run town halls. I can give an example. I just had my Q3 town hall 2 days ago, and the day after every town hall, we don't do a Q&A session at the end of a town hall. What I do is I schedule an hour long. It's got a bit of a silly name, but we call it a chat with Josh the day after, and it's just an hour long open door policy. Everyone in the organization is invited. And it's to come talk about what we just discussed in the town hall. It's to discuss, we can talk about your personal life, trips that you've taken, questions about the company strategy. And if I know the answer and I'm able to discuss the answer, then I'm going to share it with you. I really believe in a culture of trust and transparency.
Let's circle back for a second to, I honestly could not agree more, right? I think the people-centric, sometimes even people-first approach is what people forget, that everything we do here is we do it with people. Like you take the people out, all those Armageddon type of movies, you take the people out, there's nothing, none of the rest of it is going to remain. Like your customers are people, your employees are people, you are a person, right? And so, it's so important to point that out. And it's almost like funny that we need to point it out. But if I do go back to some of the practicality, which I think this is why it's hard to sometimes get this across, you mentioned something that I really appreciate, which is when you think about automation, when you think about, not doing do the least amount of manual work, focus on the quality though, also on the experience of everyone. Do you have some examples of where you guys had maybe didn't have that out of the box, inherently the culture, or something that kind of moved away from that you catched and said, no, we'd not do that like that. We would invest resources or time or focus, honestly, into prioritizing fixing this?
Yeah, I can give a recent example that I think kind of sheds some light into how we think about this. Obviously, everyone's super excited about AI and Gen AI lately. You probably can't escape one of these podcasts without Gen AI coming up, right? So I'll tell you, at Iron Mountain, one we jumped on, the first question for all CIOs with generative AI that came up was governance, right? What are we going to do from a policy standpoint, from a security standpoint? Are we going to lock it down? Are we going to be very open? When you're at a Fortune 1000 company, and we're highly regulated. So we really had to think long and hard. And I work closely with my legal teams around how are we going to approach this. So the first foray for us into AI and Gen AI, beyond what we were already building into our products, was really around how are we going to enable the whole base of employees to to experiment and explore, but do it safely where we don't run the risk of any data leakage or any security or privacy concerns. But then we quickly evolved into where we're at today, which is what we want to do. We're forming what we're calling the AI COE, and that lives in my organization. It's going to roll up into my chief enterprise architect, a gentleman named Swami Jayaraman, who's doing a really fantastic job. And the goal there, again, is not to stifle innovation, but it's really to harness the broad power of all of Iron Mountain, bring everybody's ideas together, but to make sure that we're doing this in a way that's controlled, secure, protected, and that all the investments that we're making are targeted investments in a way that's going to actually continue to propel this engine that we're building, right? We're targeted on driving growth, we're optimizing cost, and we're going to ask all the functions or all the business segments who bring these ideas in to co-develop business cases with us that have true ROI backing that they're going to sign up for. And then we're going to do the development and the engineering, which is going to include education and upskilling of our current IT staff. And then as we develop this technology, we're going to have this iterative process where there's going to be testing done by the business units or the functions. And then as we roll this out, then they're going to be on the hook for then delivering on the ROI that comes from what they originally signed up for. So that's just one example where there was a lot of work and experimentation and things happening out in pockets. And we've now harnessed the power of that, brought it all together and tried to build, think of it like a laser beam, right? There was like scattered light everywhere. And we're trying to build more of like a focused laser where we can really point it at, get everyone pointed in the same direction.
Basically, embracing some of those innovation and opportunities and see them as an opportunity for you guys to, like you said, not being an afterthought or a blocker, but someone that can actually provide insights and drive even some of those initiatives practically, right? Like I think this is what COEs are meant to be, like center of excellence. Right. If people don't know what that means, like they're meant to be the place that you incubate some of those things and then kind of like help drive it.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's so much we can, by centralizing this and then focusing, we can build on, the great work of others. You can take a foundation and build a layer upon layer upon layer on layer instead of reinventing the wheel every single time, which has a lot of, obviously, a very, very much lacks efficiency. So,
there's something funny, specific vintage point, because I'm, fortunate to talk to a lot of different people, and it's usually executives and leaders, right, from a lot of different departments and different areas. And what I find slightly amusing is that, and I'm not to put you on the spot, right, but like a lot of IT organizations are being viewed by the business as like a blocker, right? So, when you think about the after effect. Now, the funny thing though is when I hear a legal leader tell me that, legal also for a lot of other departments looks like a blocker sometimes.
Right.
And procurement or finance looks for the other teams, they look like a blocker sometimes. And even sales and marketing and product and engineering, they're all at some point for certain things, can be viewed as a blocker or as an after effect, and you can name it different things. But essentially, to me, the way I think about it sometimes is where they're not leveraged to what they're good at early enough or at the right time where that leverage happens. And it is very clear when if you had the chance to work in big company and a small company, but only if you had the chance to work in both. Because if you only ever worked in small companies, you won't understand the pain. And if you only worked in big companies, you won't understand that they can be different. Where it's really on a one-to-one, where there's only one person that is in each of those roles, then it's much actually naturally that those teams collaborate early, right? So where I'm going with this is that if that sounds like your guys' culture and the way you frame it, that collaboration, that understanding of more than just like everyone has the best intentions, but they're it sounds like there's an active or proactive approach to look outside and understand how can I leverage myself. How can I be a leverager? What are like, again, not putting you on the spot, but trying to squeeze any type of learnings from you, right? Because it's such a common challenge for leaders.
Yeah, it's a good call. How I would frame what you're saying is that I think our base instinct is to take a very self-centered view of the world, of the piece of the process that you own, however you want to think of it, right? And then once you can no longer do it yourself, and then you need someone else, by the time that piece happens, it's already late. Like you need it yesterday, and then your instinct is to be like, oh my God, they're so slow. I needed this yesterday. And you lose sight of the fact that, well, if I would have brought everyone together early and we could have orchestrated this very well, everyone could have been working in parallel, and we could have actually gotten this done much more efficiently, and we probably could create a very repeatable process. And there's a whole diatribe I could go into on the more we can sell standard versus Snowflake, the easier it is to deliver the standard, versus it's hard to scale snowflakes, if you understand what I'm talking about in terms of Snowflake, and bespoke ad hoc things don't scale globally, right? So yeah, so what I do, I try to talk to the other leaders in my company about this specific problem, and we try to get together as a group to talk about how do we understand end-to-end process, number one, and then how do we build the come together piece as soon as we learn about that work is required, work is happening, and get everyone working kind of in a straight line, but kick off everyone's piece at the same time. So if the IT work is going to take 3 months, let's start 3 months before you need it, not the day you need it, and then it's going to take 3 months, and there's no chance of customer delight if you do it the old way, right? So we kind of start from that customer-centric, customer delight model, whether my customer is an internal stakeholder or the actual end user as the customer.
Another thing that, I was curious, you kind of touched on it now with coming together with the different leaders in the company, right? I think how much of your philosophy, I'm kind of leaning towards what does the organizational structure look like? There's a situation where it's very efficient to go through, the chain of command. Sometimes people create it's like SWAT teams or inner teams. Center of excellence is another organizational, method that helps, with certain cross company initiatives. What are the, and again, I'm, we're talking about from an IT perspective. It's not only IT, right? I can show you from other departments. We inject people into those think tanks or into those micro leadership teams, right? For this line of product or for this, initiative. I'm you growing in Asia. So for that initiative, who are the leaders in that initiative from all the different functional areas, and give them the empowerment, to your earlier point, to drive their thing. The reason I'm coming to all of this is because how do you balance it with cost efficiency? And this is where it's really hard is if you have unlimited cash, as you can see in some of those behemoths, Facebook / Meta, Google, all that stuff, they were known into it's product program managers upon program managers upon program manager, and planning ahead and doing it. But then they become so inefficient by trying to be efficient, with all this extra fat. And it was not controversial. Everyone knows that, right? So now the question is, how do you do both?
Yeah, I think for us, the way I think about it is we're organized very much by, your traditional, function and, business unit, the operating unit, right? And the way, within IT, I try to think of, my business, those operating units, those business lines or the functions as my customers. So I almost think of IT as kind of running a mini, product organization. We're delivering IT services as a product. And what I try to do more often than not is deliver those services in a fixed capacity model. I try to make my, function leaders or the business unit leaders aware of like, this is the capacity that I have to service you, specifically you. You do what you want with that capacity. And then underlying that is our enterprise platform strategy. And that's where we gain the most efficiency because like I was saying before, the less snowflakes, the less ad hoc that we have in the system, the more efficient we can be. So the build, support, maintenance of the platforms is another layer that then we manage. So as we solution for a given business segment or a given function, we're always solutioning on top of existing, platforms that I brought in, when I got here 4 years ago. So it's kind of a combination of that horizontal platform strategy mixed in with the vertical alignment on how we deliver IT as a product to the internal stakeholders.
I think there's something very deep in that, like and I've had the fortune of talking to a lot of people, and I think many people do see their other department as their customers, but I think there's a nuance to what you said, which I think is important, which is managing your own department, not in a silo from the sense of like, we're just doing, our job and kind of like carrying our part of the load, but instead we're an entity that is meant to built to operating to service our customers is those different departments, but we measure ourselves as almost like a standalone entity that is meant to service those folks. And I think honestly, if everyone would have done that, that's a system that can actually work instead of thinking about it as collaboration in the sense of like we're all working on the same goal, which is also true. But when you think about it from that perspective, that's when you start to have like too many layers of like decision making and there's not, a frame of thought. And if you think about yourself, I do this and you do this and you do this, and I just, pass it on to you, then you lose the other side of it, right? Which is the only person that can orchestrate it is the CEO, which is not scalable. Right. But if you have each of the functional areas think themselves as our customers, it's not the company customers. Our customers is these people, but we treat them as the way that the company treats their customers.
Right.
If anyone think about because I think that's valid for sales teams, for engineering team, for product team, for legal team, for finance team, every one of the different functions, if they understand that the only team that actually serves the customers is the customer service team,
right?
Everyone else are servicing each other, then everything will be easier. If sales, for example, would understand that they're bringing revenue, yes, but what they're actually bringing is accounts for the account management team and the customer success team.
Right.
If engineering understand that what their customers are not only the customers, but also sales team is their customer.
Right.
They need to be able to demo those things early enough and know about it early enough. You know what I mean? Like if everyone would actually map the different organization dependencies, not as dependencies, but as business that pays for their
build that value stream all the way out.
Yeah. Then I think, that will result because I'll test with frameworks, because I agree with you, the culture is everything, but it's really hard to manufacture culture.
Yeah.
And worse than that, not everyone has the luxury of having a good culture. They might step into a place that they're trying to make better, but the culture is not fully there. And changing people is the hardest thing, if not impossible thing. And so what is the framework that you can, trying to put in that the end result naturally, would become the end result that you want.
Yeah. I always say that the two biggest assets any corporation has, big or small, are its people and its data. Because you have to you don't want to be you have to protect your people, find the good people, protect them. And then the data, you want to become, if you're not already, a fact-based organization. You don't want to be an organization that's making gut-based decisions. So you want to quickly pivot to a really robust enterprise data strategy. And then if your customers aren't used to interacting with you on a data and fact basis versus a subjective, yeah, this quarter you guys did great. Yeah, last quarter you guys weren't so great. You got to pivot them to a very much a fact based, method of working with you. So I really believe strongly in data, be fact based, which has its roots in data. And now with AI, everything is data, right? If it's garbage data in, you're going to get garbage data out from any, AI models that you build. And then your people.
I think you can say that you'll get garbage data out from people too if the garbage if is garbage. Cool, man. Well, this was awesome. Like we had a lot of advices here. That was a very advice heavy conversation, which I love. I'll still, love always ask what is the personal advice you got in your career that you feel like you can pay forward. And a lot of people striving their career to get to be an executive in a big company and lead organizations. What is something strikes for you that was impactful?
Yeah, sure. The advice I always give, I get this question a lot, and I don't know that I ever received this advice, but something I've always done in my career, and I always give to early career folks that I talk to now, are just say yes. Like if you get an opportunity, you get asked to take on a new challenge, a new project, a new program, maybe one that's struggling. If your boss or your boss's boss asks you to step in and lead that program, just do it. Like I meet so many people these days who say no to me, say no to other leaders in the company. And it kind of baffled me. They might say, well, that's not on my 5-year career plan or whatever. And I will just say that there's so many things I've done in my career because I said yes without even really knowing what I said yes to. I mean, I said yes to taking the CIO job I got a phone call on a Sunday and they're like, hey, we want you to be CIO. And I was like, sure. Okay. And so I would just say, you learn so much by being stretched and you learn by doing hard things. You don't learn by a 5-year plan that you write on a piece of paper and every single thing going right. So I just encourage people to say yes and solve problems for your bosses and for your leaders. Like show that you're someone who can step up and do more than you think you can. So.
I love that. I cannot agree more. The one thing I would add, if you don't mind, is that I think many people are doing yes, but if they say yes, and I think the people that actually grow fastest in titles are the people that did not ask for the titles. They're taking the work, they're taking the responsibility. That's even more important. And they're, like you said, they're saying yes to the challenge that comes in. And then more often than not, if not most of the cases, in my experience at least, because I work in big companies too, that leads to that responsibility, in the bigger title with the bigger team and all that stuff.
Yeah, the recognition will come.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I love that. So thank you for that. Well, it was awesome talking. I think, like I said, there's a lot of great insights here and learning. If someone wanna, ping you, ask you a question, or just follow, is that LinkedIn? Is that Twitter/X? What is where do you hang?
Yeah, LinkedIn's probably the best for work. Yeah, I'm on some of the other ones too. People can probably find me, but yeah, hit me on LinkedIn and in the comment say that you heard the podcast, so I know, because I get a lot of. I don't respond to everything, but yeah, drop a note about the podcast and I'll definitely accept you.
Awesome.
And then just real quick, if there's any like CIOs out there that are struggling to do the job, there's a lot. One thing I love about what I do at Iron Mountain is that I get to consume Iron Mountain services and kind of help shape the services that we offer, whether it's from data center or our asset lifecycle management business. And I think that puts me in a really unique position to just be out there talking to other CIOs and explaining the transformation that we go through and how I build culture, but also how I consume Iron Mountain services. So if you want to ever talk to me about that, or talk to anyone in our ALM team or our data center team or any of our other services, I'm happy to set that up. We have a really compelling story, and we're a very different Iron Mountain today than we were 4 years ago. So definitely reach out about that as well. It's pretty exciting what we're doing over here.
Awesome, man. Yeah, that sounds, you know, transformational for sure. I think the way you describe it, the way you guys operate is quite poster boy for like what do you want organization to unlock. So good stuff, man. Well, congrats for everything. Thank you for the conversation, man. It was awesome.
Yeah, this was great. Thanks for having me. I'm excited, and congrats on the podcast. This is really cool.